The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the speakers and do not necessarily represent the views of the Department of Modern Languages and Cultures or the Department of History or Baylor University.
Welcome to In Other Worlds, a podcast, MLC at Baylor, the Department of Modern Languages and Cultures. My name is Stephen Sloan. I'll be your host today. This is episode 5 of In Other Worlds. My two guests that are with me today are Dr. Michael Long, who is chair of the Department of Modern Languages and Cultures at Baylor, and Dr. Julie deGraffenried, who is chair of the Department of History. Welcome.
Thank you.
It's so great to have you here, and I enjoyed the opportunity to take a look at this work that you put together that was published last year, this edited volume of you and 8 other contributors that looked at Michael Bourdeaux, his legacy, and, of course, the important holdings of the Keston Archive. But those that are watching may have no idea who Michael Bourdeaux is or was, and they may have no sense of what the Keston Archive is. They may know about the Keston collection at Baylor, but so could you maybe each take one and talk about Michael Bourdeaux and the Keston Archive?
You're talking about Bourdeaux, and we can both talk about the art.
Okay, so Michael Bourdeaux was born in England. He was early on a great scholar of languages, apparently, ended up doing his national service in Russian language, ended up in Oxford, was on the first exchange from England to the Soviet Union in 1959, where he got to experience life in the Soviet Union. That coincides with Nikita Khrushchev's leadership in the Soviet Union, and it coincides also with the beginning of, or the reinvigoration of anti-religious campaigns in the Soviet Union, which had been relaxed for quite some time. Bourdeaux ends up feeling called to the ministry, so he becomes an Anglican priest in the 1960s. And after this sort of, I don't know, how would you say, miraculous trip, providential trip in 1964, where he actually comes in contact with 2 women who had smuggled out sort of a plea for help on the part of believers. He decides that that's what he wants to dedicate the rest of his life to, is helping be the voice of believers of all faiths in the Soviet Union who were trying to live out their true selves in a system that didn't want to let them do that. And so he started what's called the Center for the Study of Religion and Communism in 1969. It was renamed Keston College in the early 70s, then the Keston Institute. And they felt like their purpose. Do you want to talk about this part? The purpose of Keston College?
I hope the purpose that I think there was is the same purpose that you.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So create a good argument.
So he began to collect materials that he saw, materials produced by the Soviet government, propaganda pieces, posters, artistic pieces, pamphlets, things of this nature that were preaching against religion and the practice of religion, and made a collection out of these. So originally it was anti-religious propaganda produced by the state that he collected, but he also started to receive individual memoirs and books and things created by practicing believers talking about their oppression under the regime. And so it grew gradually to include more broadly dissident literature as well, and not only from the Soviet Union, but all the other satellite states, and then in later years, even from other regimes around the world that were never a part of the Soviet bloc. So they amassed this enormous collection, and during the Cold War years, the Keston Institute became one of the most important repositories of dissident information for Western news outlets and for Western governments and other media. So it played a very huge role in informing the West about things happening in the Soviet Union that you couldn't find in the regular press.
Right. And their job, as they saw it, was educational and really academic in nature, right? They were supporting, like Michael Bourdeaux's own research on religion under communism. He kind of establishes that as a subject to be studied by scholars. So he himself wrote a bunch of books, but they would bring in scholars to work with their materials. But then they also saw the publication of this, particularly this smuggled out material. I mean, this what's called self-published or samizdat material as part of their purpose, because they would get stuff handed to them, but then they would verify. And if they couldn't verify that it was true, whatever that means, then they wouldn't pass it on, right? And so they were verifying everything that they possibly could that got smuggled out, and then sending it to, Amnesty International or the UN or
Exactly.
the BBC or...
Which I think says a lot for the Keston Institute and Bourdeaux's agency, in fact, that he didn't just take one person's word for things that might be happening officially, but he made sure that whatever was reported in the materials they received could be corroborated by other sources. And only then would they write a report or a press release and then disseminate it.
Well, I want to ask, just because you stressed that point, why do you think that was so important to Bourdeaux to go through that process of verification?
One reason is because some of the materials they received came from high-profile people. And they, in a way, were somehow known quantities in their home countries. And you could say a kind of celebrity, in a way. Celebrity dissident, maybe, even though that's not the best term. But he didn't want to release anything that could be damaging to that person, for one thing. But also, in many materials that might be memoirs and things, memoirs are faulty. And as a historical source, as you know, you have to take the material you find in a memoir. You need to find some kind of other corroboration of those memories. Otherwise, they can be easily dismissed. And I think he didn't want all the hard work they were doing. And sometimes people put their own lives at risk to bring the materials to Keston or to transfer them in some way. And you didn't want someone to risk their life in that way for it not to go anywhere and mean anything, I think.
And I think there was something really deeply personal to him as well. I mean, the Soviet government, the official things they're putting out, right? They're saying this is the truth. They're saying there is no persecution, right? Our Constitution provides for freedom of religion. So there is no persecution going on. So that's one way of looking at truth, right? That's one truth regime in place. This was his way of saying that's not the truth, right? This is the truth. The verification was part of being able to confidently say, here is a counter to the truth that the Soviet government is saying.
Yeah, thank you for that. Michael Bourdeaux passed away in 2021. It might seem natural to do something in tribute to Michael Bourdeaux, but I get a sense in looking at the book that this is tribute, but it's more than that. Can you talk a little bit about the genesis of the book? Yeah,
sure. Well,
first we should say that you came up with the idea for a book.
I opened my mouth and spoke during a board meeting for Keston. One thing that we should perhaps say to the audience is that, yes, Michael Bourdeaux founded the archive. It lived in England for a number of years, but in 2003, for various reasons, they were unable to maintain the archive there. So they were looking for someone to take it over, to purchase it. And they had many universities, institutions approach them that they were only interested in certain parts of the archive. And the Keston leadership did not want to break up the collection. So Baylor put forward a proposal to purchase the entire collection. So it was transferred to Baylor and now lives on Baylor campus. And that's why we're involved with it to begin with. So there is a governing board for the Keston archive, which Julie and I are both members of. And one of the main goals of that archive is to digitize as many of the materials as we can and to organize the materials and catalog the materials. So that digitization project has been going on for virtually since 2003. It may not have begun exactly then, but virtually since that time. To digitize posters, letters, postcards, what we call ephemera, produced in the Soviet Union that was anti-religious in nature or that was connected somehow to dissident activities, etc. And in addition to the entire book collection that is now a library collection as part of the archive.
A treasure trove here on campus. But the book. Why? You had plenty to do, Michael. So why did you say?
Well, Bourdeaux was such an important person in the history of the Cold War, I believe, in terms of bringing information about what was happening on the ground in the Soviet Union to the Western world. And when he died, I thought it would be a great tribute if we produced something based on the archive that would celebrate his work. And I think that's what we did.
Yeah.
We wanted it to all be original research. We did not want it to be filled with articles simply praising Bourdeaux and making a hero out of him, though, and for many people he is somewhat of a hero.
Or even things that had been published before. So this is all original.
They're all original work, not been published before, and if they're not based on a particular artifact in the Keston, they're based on themes that were important to Keston.
Yeah, and I think it does that. It's not just a tribute to him; it's evidence of his legacy, and it's a slice of his legacy. I think that's really insightful. So you have the 8 contributors. Xenia Dennen, who of course deserves her own book, I guess.
Yes, she does.
It had a long-time stalwart with the Keston. Contributed this book. How did you pick? How did you select contributors? How did you decide who to invite to contribute?
By the end of summer 2021, we had sent out a call for abstracts to approximately 50 people that we knew who had either worked in the Keston archive, had done research in the archive, or had published on freedom of religion. And we sat back and waited for the responses. And we received approximately, I would say, maybe 20 abstracts. And then from there, we read the abstracts. And those that we decided would make good material for the book, then we invited them to submit their complete papers, which they did. And we had I would say between 10 and 15 papers, and we eventually settled on the 10 that are in the book.
Okay.
And they're fabulous. I mean, this is like an ensemble cast. It's like a good Knives Out movie, right? And well, these are.
Now I'm wondering who did it.
It's a really good mixture of well-established scholars in the field of religion and communism, or the field of human rights, or the field of Soviet history, or Eastern Bloc history, but also across disciplines, right? I mean, we have somebody who's writing about Michael Bourdeaux's theology, and we have Michael writing about literature smuggling of literature, right? Is lots of other approaches.
The more James Bondy aspect, though. For that.
Yeah, I noticed that there's pictures of devices in your chapter. I'll ask each of you, and you can't say your own or each other's, but which one is your favorite chapters in the book now, looking back on the project?
I would have to say I really like the chapter about the workings of Keston. I think Zoe Knox is the author, and she really sets the tone for what Keston was all about, and talking about their process of how they took in new materials, how they verified the materials, what the actual day-to-day work was like at Keston in verifying and establishing the collection, right? And how researchers work with the materials. And I think it's a very good introduction to the collection as a whole.
So I also was going to say Zoe's chapter.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. We didn't talk about this ahead of time. So, there you go. Which really does a great job of explaining why the collection itself and why the approach to working with this self-published material is so important even now. I think a really unique chapter in the book actually is the very last one, which is by Sergei Filatov, who is a sociologist in Russia right now, who is probably the most well-published and well-known sociologist of religion in the Russian Federation.
Wow.
I mean, he's been, it's like the song, he's been everywhere. Crisscrossing the country, just talking to different religious communities. He probably knows more about religion on the ground in Russia than anybody alive.
And not just Christianity or the Russian Orthodox Church.
Every faith.
He's been working with Keston for a number of years, and also with Xenia Dennen, who have traveled to various corners of the Russian Federation, documenting religious practice of all kinds, even pre-Christian religions, and to create an encyclopedia of religion in Russia. And that work is still ongoing. And Filatov is a major contributor to that.
Well, the book starts with a bang. So the foreword by Rowan Williams, how did that come about?
Oh, let you take
Well, it's a really good book. So, I mean,
Why wouldn't he want to? Why wouldn't he? You did him a favor.
exactly.
You can put it on his resume.
I did that if he needed it.
Yeah, no, we're absolutely delighted that the former Archbishop of Canterbury would write a foreword for the book. He knew Michael Bourdeaux.
I see.
He knew Michael Bourdeaux. He was a supporter of what Keston was doing for a really long time. Xenia Dennen knows Rowan Williams, and actually, I think she suggested.
Yeah, it was like we decided we were doing a book, and she said, I will ask Rowan Williams if he can write a foreword.
Okay.
And that's before he ever knew what was going to be in the book.
That's nice.
And honestly, it's a beautifully written preface. You could just, like, we could just sit here and read the preface and then be like, oh,
It is very powerful.
broadcast over.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a really powerful, just like remembrance of what was important about.
Well, you may have to buy one to get a good glimpse at this, but these are for sale, right? Okay. The cover image.
You should wait. You say that again.
These are for sale.
They are for sale.
Oh, you're gonna hold up the camera?
Can I hold up a QR
Maybe
code?
the
Can you
craziest
answer?
thing I've ever seen.
Because why should? But this is a big deal.
This is a big deal.
So
In the show notes.
okay, in the show notes, you can get the QR code if that doesn't show up very well because they're open access. The book is open access.
Fantastic.
And so you can get it for free.
I would think
Yes.
Michael Bourdeaux would be proud.
Michael Bourdeaux would love that.
Yeah.
And we should say, give credit where credit is due. The press, Cornell University Press, asked us if we could provide funding for OER access. We said, well, we'll do our best. And Keston came through and funded the OER.
Oh, that's awesome.
For us. So, I mean, because the Keston Institute still exists, they still have a governing board, where we are very much in communication with them from Baylor to England. In fact, we have a regular board meeting every spring, and we have representatives of Xenia Dennen coming from England to participate in those events. So we're still very much connected with them.
Well, I've got one more question, maybe a harder question. So brace yourselves. But, in reading this book and looking at the book now, it is about the Cold War, but it's about so much more than that. And I think in the age of authoritarianism, which we're kind of in right now, I mean, how do you see the book landing as we think about being in this new age that we're in right now with global politics?
Well, I think it's really important. We go through cycles where we think, all these issues about freedom of conscience and academic freedom, that these things are solved, that everyone understands what that means, why it's important, and why we need to protect it. But in fact, and I tell people all the time, not everyone understands this, right? We can never give it up. We can never say, everyone understands this, we don't have to keep advocating. But the title of the book, Freedom of Conscience. And what I like about the stories included in the book, the personal stories, they're all about people who took risks in oppressive regimes to live out their best life. It might be a life of faith. It may not have been particularly a life about faith itself, but it was about being a free thinker. And I think we can take lessons from them. What to do, how do you live your life under oppression? Do you just lie down like a rug and accept everything and let everything happen to you? Or do you stand up and resist? And I'm in the resistor camp. I'll just say that here.
Yeah, that was great.
People who know me at Baylor know that I will ask questions and will resist.
Dr. Rathbury, do you have a response?
I would just say, I think it's worth being reminded what religious persecution looks like.
Yeah.
What does it look like? Here are many, many examples of what what that attempt to live out one's faith looks like under oppression, not perceived oppression.
Yeah.
Not, I don't know, not perceived oppression, right? But actual social, political, economic,
Discrimination,
punitive,
unprecedented
oppression. Yeah, it's a good reminder, I think.
In the many different ways that manifests itself, which really comes through with your contributors and the different angles they approach the topic. So we could talk all day about all of your work and all of your upcoming work. Check out their faculty web pages to see more of the work that they're doing. But I want to thank my guests, Dr. Michael Long and Dr. Julie deGraffenried. Please follow that unfollowable QR code and pick up Freedom of Conscience in Post-Soviet Space, Legacies of Michael Bourdeaux and the Keston Archive. Thank you for joining us.